Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's title story, an entitled Karen attacked me at a steakhouse for not serving her, however, I am just a customer. Let's dive right into the video. So last night I am finishing up my shift as an EMT and it's been a long and tiring one. The calls were not bad, but there were a lot of them and we were all over the damn county. So my shift is over, I change back into my comfy clothes, sweats, t-shirt, hoodie, and I head to the store to get something for dinner. I get there just in time since they are closing in 10 minutes. I assure the cashier that I was just grabbing something quick and I go and pick up a lasagna from the frozen section. I grab them and turn to head to the checkout when I hear ahem. Not a throat clearing sound, but someone saying it like they were reading it out loud. I turn and look to see a woman and she snaps off a "I need you to go in the back and get me a pack of the frozen pretzels." I say that I don't work here and point out where an employee just went behind an end cap. The woman snaps, "You do work here and you need to stop being lazy and get me my pretzels." I again say, "I don't work here," and turn to walk to the self-checkout. She flips her crap and storms off muttering about lazy employees and managers. I finish checking out and I'm grabbing my stuff and leaving when I see her again with her card and a manager and she yells, "There she is! That's the lazy employee," and starts towards me. I'm not even gonna engage, so I hold up my receipt and my one item to the self-check girl and walk out. I hear the manager raising his voice and saying, "Ma'am? Ma'am? Ma'am?" It turns out she left her cart behind and stormed out the store to confront me. I get in my car to drive off, but she is standing in front of it, so I cannot go anywhere. She's also giving me a tongue lashing that I'm too checked out to really pay attention to. Great, I'm already on my last nerve and this woman is hate effing it. The manager sticks his head out of the door and hollers, "Ma'am," and she turns and makes a hushing motion towards him. He hollers, "Ma'am," one more time and she hollers back saying, "I'm dealing with your employee since you're too much of a little witch to do it yourself." He bristles and says, "Madam." She cuts him off with the "Shut the hell up," screeched at the top of her lungs. He shrugs and I watch him go back inside, fiddle with the locks, flip the sign to closed and pull down the shades. As I'm watching this, she gets annoyed that I'm not paying her my full attention and she yells, "What the hell are you looking at? That's so damn important to ignore me." I just pointed at the shop and say, "Well, they just closed and locked the doors." I'm not sure what she screams and it was pretty incoherent, but she did run towards the door. Seeing my chance, I drove off, leaving her pounding on the door and cursing. The next one is the title story and it is titled "Psycho Idiot Attacks Me at Steakhouse with a Knife for Not Serving Her." I'm 27 years old and I started dating a guy from one of my vet classes nearly 2 years ago. We had multiple classes together and I instantly developed a crush on him, but convinced myself that he did not feel the same way. We worked together on a couple of projects and assisted in some surgeries together for one of our classes, and on the last day of the semester he came up to me and asked me out to dinner, which I immediately agreed to. I was shocked that he was interested in me, but I saw how much he respected me after our first date came to an end. We've gone on tons of dates since then and have been discussing getting an apartment together so that we would see more of each other. Our major can get pretty busy and there's very little time to go out or visit friends, family or significant others. Even when you have the time, you don't always feel like going out because of how draining all the work is. The second I am done with classes for the day, all I want to do is sleep for hours on end. All of that info is useful to know because my boyfriend Nathan and I make a pretty big deal about date nights since we don't get to have them very often. It takes a lot of planning for us to find common free days where we could go see a movie or have fancy dinner out at a restaurant. However, this specific incident I'm gonna be talking about one where we had planned to go out for Nathan's birthday and it happened to fall on a day where neither of us had to go to classes or work, so we made reservations at a local steakhouse. It was a restaurant we often went to because the food was delicious while still being reasonably priced and affordable for two broke college students. I had put on a nice white blouse and black pants along with some gold jewelry that made the entire outfit stand out more. Nathan wore the nicest thing he owned, which was a button-up shirt and a pair of tailored pants that he had worn at a wedding 2 years prior. We weren't exactly the fanciest couple, but we did our best to dress up more than we usually did. After all, we wore scrubs the vast majority of the day at school and work and then changed into sweats the moment we got home. Anyway, this was practically a red carpet look for us. We arrived in time for our reservation and there was a decent line waiting to be seated in the restaurant, so we were definitely glad that we had planned ahead so we wouldn't have to wait for ages. There was an older woman at the front of the line which was making a big fuss about the wait, saying that she didn't think she needed a reservation and demanded to be seated before everyone else. I could hear the woman behind the counter attempt to explain why she couldn't do that, but Nathan and I kept moving forward to our table. I didn't feel bad because we were smart enough to plan ahead and make a reservation, so anyone who didn't was left to deal with the consequences. We sat at a small table next to a young couple who were finishing up their meal. It was nice and we had a nice view of the street outside, so we could watch people come and go without being surrounded by others on all sides. We settled in and the waitress Natalie put in our drink orders before tending to other tables. We talked about our classes as we no longer shared a single class, so there was always something to discuss, whether it was the things we learned or other students that were getting on our nerves. It was a wonderful way to catch up and grow closer as a couple. I was just bringing up my plans for the upcoming holiday season so that we could discuss if we wanted to visit family together or go separately and celebrate together earlier on when a couple was seated at the table next to us. I was not staring or anything, but I noticed that the wife immediately began speaking to her husband in a hushed tone where the only words I could make out were lazy and youth. I glanced over for a second and realized it was the same woman who had been yelling at the staff earlier, which caused me to roll my eyes and return to my conversation. It might have been a bit mean to have that type of reaction to a stranger, but I didn't have any reason to believe that she had seen me, so I didn't think anything of it. Natalie came back and we gave her our dinner orders and she moved on to wait on the couple beside us. They seemed to be talking to her for a long time, so I paused what I was doing and attempted to listen in. The woman, who I will call Karen, was saying something about how unprofessional it was that people who work at this restaurant would take a break at one of the tables and take up a place that could be occupied by a customer. I looked around in an attempt to see who she was talking about, but I couldn't see anyone that seemed like they worked here. Natalie seemed equally confused and said as much, but I couldn't hear anything else that Karen was saying, so I turned back to Nathan and started telling him about a funny story my sister told me. It took about 30 or 40 minutes for our food to show up and we started eating. It was delicious and I was doing my best to savor every bite. Nathan tried a little bit of my meal and I had some of his, which is something we always do. Nathan scowled at something and I asked him what was wrong, so he told me that the woman next to us would not stop staring daggers at me. I purposefully avoided looking over at her and tried to continue enjoying my meal. Karen kept looking at me and clearing her throat, and when I looked over, she would gesture to herself and her menu, but I couldn't figure out what she wanted, so I went back to my meal. When Natalie dropped off their food, she kept her at the table to talk to her. Natalie: I'm sorry, is there something wrong? Karen: no, everything is not fine. Natalie: what's the problem? This lazy woman refuses to serve us. I looked over because I had a feeling that she was talking about me. Natalie: I'm not sure I understand. Karen: she's just been sitting there eating all night long instead of doing her job. She is lazy and I want to speak to her manager so she gets fired. Me: I'm sorry, what do you think? Do you think I work here? Of course you do, you're wearing the uniform. I looked at myself and then looked at Natalie and realized we were wearing very similar outfits. It was not enough to make someone think I worked there, at least in my opinion though. Me: I hate to break it to you, but I don't work here. I'm a vet student and I work at a local clinic a handful of evenings a week. Karen: I don't believe you. You're a liar on top of being lazy. I turned away after this and I could hear Natalie trying to stand up for me by backing up the fact that I was not an employee. I could tell that Nathan was getting close to stepping in because he hated seeing someone be so disrespectful and single-handedly ruin the good mood we were both in. I then went back to my food for a little while, but it became clear that the situation was only escalating further. I told Karen that I was not an employee of this restaurant and that she was more than welcome to get a manager, and asked them if she was so convinced that I was lying. I added that she needed to stop acting stupid and mind her own damn business. I saw her face turn red with anger and her husband reached over in an attempt to calm her down, but she just shrugged him off. I turned my back on her but froze when I saw a terrified look across my boyfriend's face. He jumped up and pulled me out of my seat and I spun around to see what was going on, only to be met with Karen lunging at me with a steak knife in her hand. I screamed and attempted to get away, but she managed to cut the side of my arm before another customer disarmed her and held her back. It was a shallow cut, but it stung. Nathan was all over me, checking to make sure I was okay and using a napkin to stop the bleeding. Natalie had called 911 with her cell phone and had hurried away to get a manager, so it didn't take long for someone to come over and check on us. The police arrived quickly and a paramedic took me aside to get a good look at my wound and administer first aid. It did not take long for the officers to figure out what had happened since there were so many witnesses, and they took Karen away in handcuffs and she got charged for assault with a deadly weapon. The restaurant gave us a handful of coupons for free meals that we plan on using the next time we have a free evening. My arm healed completely and Karen is still in custody, so she won't be bothering anyone for a while. Update to the story: some of you were asking what happened to this Karen spawn from hell. Well, I'm happy to tell you that she is now spending some much needed time behind bars and won't be bothering anyone for a long time. God bless. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I am very happy to hear that, because certainly this Karen does not belong in public, because she is not only a nuisance but actually dangerous. Honestly, people like this should not roam around in the streets. The next one is titled, I don't work here but I got fired. I used to work at a West Coast division store of Kroger. My family has several pets and farm animals. So I routinely shop at a local farm store, and most of the time I did this after my shift ended, which means I am in my work uniform, which means black slacks, either a dark red polo shirt or a button-up gray shirt that have the store logos embroidered on them. The farm store personnel wear jeans, t-shirts and gold-colored vests with the farm store logo. I was in the farm store looking at some electric fence supplies. This woman kept pestering me and asking questions about some jeans she wanted to try on from the other side of the store. I politely pointed in the general direction of the clothing section and she stomped off. A couple minutes later, the same woman is demanding that I unlock the changing room for her. I am rather irritated with her over-aggressive Karen attitude and I snapped, "No, now go away and leave me alone." Again she stomps off. I picked up a few items and started towards the checkout when I get ambushed by this same woman who now has the store manager in tow. She is demanding that I apologize to her. The manager just shakes his head and then asks, "Would you like to apologize to this customer?" I said, "What for?" She is rude, obnoxious and irritating as hell. No, I don't want to apologize. She then screams, "I've never been so humiliated in my life. You need to fire him now." The manager is still shaking his head in disbelief when he says, "Well, ma'am, I'm not able to do that." "And just why the hell not?" she demanded. The store manager is just standing there staring at her. I reply, "Obviously, she's not smart enough to figure out that I don't work here. So to save us both some time and fire me, then maybe she will shut up and go away." So the manager said, "You're fired." The manager barked, drawing even more attention from the other customers in the store. I lean in closer to the woman and say, "Are you happy now, ma'am?" That's the third time she has fired me this week. Have a nice day. Thanks for shopping at Smith Food and Drugs. And I walked away as everyone listening starts laughing. The managers holler at me as I'm walking towards the registers. "See you tomorrow?" "Yeah, I have to get hay and alfalfa." The woman threw down the jeans she was holding and ran out the doors. And the next one is titled, Karen thinks I am her servant. I stopped by Costco for a quick hot dog and a drink, finished eating, threw my trash away and started to leave. As I'm walking past the other tables, I hear, "Excuse me." I didn't think anything of it since I don't work here. I was by myself and I didn't see anyone that I knew. Again I hear, "Excuse me," only a bit louder and obviously annoyed. I turn around and not seeing anyone that I know or who exactly had been speaking, I turn to leave when Karen yells, "I'm talking to you. I need you to wipe this table off." I look around dumbfounded because surely she was not talking to me and it wasn't the table I'd been sitting at. Not wanting to be rude, I asked her what she wanted again and Karen told me, almost screaming, to wipe this table down now. Well, now everyone at the tables and checkout lines are staring. I told her in my most pleasant and sarcastic voice, "Wipe your own damn table. I don't work here." She just stood there with a stupid look on her face as people shook their heads and laughed. I seriously think that some of these people need some medical attention. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I would love to know, have you ever been mistaken for an employee at a restaurant or grocery store or whatever in public? Please let me know in the comments. Funnily enough, I have never been mistaken for an employee, however, my girlfriend had been. When we were in Vietnam, and obviously my girlfriend is Thai, she is not Vietnamese and cannot speak Vietnamese, she got mistaken by an entire Korean tourist group for an employee at a shop. And usually my girlfriend is pretty friendly, although she's not always as confident as she should be in her English, so she was actually helping the tourists at first and they were very happy about it. And the next one is titled, Petty revenge on drunk, inconsiderate house guests. So I had a group of friends over for a typical booze and schmooze party, and several of them asked to sleep over given that they had too much. So yeah, absolutely, I have a spare room, and of course there's the couch. Late into the evening, party winds down, other guests start to leave one by one. Start doing a little pickup and notice that both beds are taken, with a collection of intoxicated inconsiderates. Only one not in a bed. Me, no room on either. Finish my cleaning, went to my bedroom, slide the pillows out from under their heads. I pull all the covers off, leaving some uncovered drunks snoozing away, and I crank the AC down to 58. I take all the pillows and covers to the couch and have a nice cozy sleep. And wow guys, I gotta say, considering that this is a petty revenge story, I would say that's a pretty mean revenge. Maybe it could even be dangerous if someone catches a cold, or maybe something even worse. But maybe I'm just overthinking. The next one is titled Getting Revenge on a Fraudster. So back in the day, my aunt lived in a council house in a rough area of London. She was caring for her young child and my uncle was working. They were tired of the city life and this area had a lot of violence, drugs and the like. She wanted better for her child and family. So she decided to put in for a house swap to Devon, which when you live in a council property you can do. My family had just moved there, talked about how nice it was and the like, and so she filed to swap. Soon she had found a nice little 2-bedroom flat and was scheduled to swap with a guy, details unknown. Everything went through fine and they moved to Devon and began a much calmer, safer life. My aunt is a very meticulous person, and so as soon as she knew she was moving, she arranged for all of the posts to be sent to the new address on the appropriate date. However, there were about 3 days in between where some post was still sent to her old address. And unfortunately, this included 2 bank statements, one for my aunt and one for my uncle. Now, any decent person would just throw them out or forward them, send them back to the post office, etc., but not this guy. He proceeded to open that mail, an illegal offense, take the info to the Department of Records and locate my aunt's mother's maiden name. He then proceeded to attempt to open many credit cards in her and my uncle's name. Fortunately for her, she was notified of this suspicious activity and managed to prevent this fraud from happening, which would have ruined both of their credit and destroyed their chances of getting a mortgage, which they eventually did. My aunt reported this to the police, however, as no crime of fraud had actually been committed, stopped by the banks and my aunt, there were no grounds for criminal charges. Now, see, this POS had not been as meticulous as my aunt in redirecting his mail, and so the letters began to pile up. My aunt decided tit for tat and opened some of the letters. It turns out this guy was in some pretty serious debt and had been avoiding the debtors, moving being a pretty big way of getting away from them. This guy, before committing his attempted fraud, had asked my aunt to not give out his address. So much aunt did what anyone would do and called up the debtors one by one, told them that the guy no longer lived at the address. They were obviously disappointed until she gave them the new address, to which they were delighted. Now they knew where he was and began to hound him for the debt he owed. So much so that he lost that lovely council property, which if he had stayed in, purchased and then sold on, would be worth quite a bit of money, since the area has now undergone a lot of investment and growth. Because he had to skip town to get away from his debtors. If he had been an upstanding citizen and not a craphead, he would have gotten away with it and lived a relatively carefree life. And the next one is titled Getting Revenge on a Terrible Person. 2 years ago, I met a man in a bar. He approached me and we started chatting. He was very charming, intelligent and charismatic, so we exchanged numbers and began dating. He was very attentive and sweet, single, never been married, no children. He is beginning to sound like Prince Charming. I am also a little naive and have not had a lot of experience with relationships. We see each other regularly and he is in constant contact with me via phone. He texts me all day, every day. We exchange hundreds of messages every day when we were not together. 6 weeks after we meet, he begins telling me how much he dislikes his current living arrangement and how awful his housemates are and how he wants to move out. I live in a large home by myself and he hints whether he can move in. I think this is a little fast, so I don't offer him a place to stay with me. He never mentions moving again, we continue to see each other and talk all day every day. We talk about the future, marriage, holidays, kids, etc. He had told me previously about how wealthy he is, how he owns multiple homes and businesses around the world. And yes guys, press X to doubt. Anyway, which is why it was surprising 8 months into the relationship when he started asking me for money when he started his new business. I declined to give him any money as I have noticed a lot of little lies and inconsistencies with his stories and behavior. He is also very controlling and constantly nagging me. I start to cool off on him as things are not adding up. He assures me everything he has said is true and he would never lie to me and he loves me so much and would never hurt me. Something feels off still. I start sleuthing him online trying to find information about him, but nothing comes up. So I end things with him, he begs me back, I am dubious but I continue to talk to him as I am very curious about finding out who this guy I fell in love with really is. I hired a private investigator to find out as I just cannot shake my gut instinct that something bad is going on. I was devastated to find out the truth. He in reality has been married for 10 years and lives with his wife and 2 kids. He's been married 3 times and has 5 kids. He is also broke, he lied about his age, where he grew up, childhood, etc. He has a serious mental health disorder, he is a pathological liar and chronic manipulator. I did realize this by the end, he sleeps with men on the down low and has a harem of women. He perpetuates love fraud schemes for attention, money and acquisitions. He has conned his friends out of money. The list is just endless. I confront him, he lies and says it is not true. I am livid and I tell him to get lost. He goes for one last try to con money out of me again. So the revenge is, I blast him on social media from an anonymous account to warn his future victims. I also post screenshots of the dossier provided by the PI. It creates a huge amount of interest and goes viral. It turns out this guy has screwed over more people than originally thought and people want justice. I have left the state I was living in when this occurred 3 months ago and I am trying to move on with my life. Always trust your gut instincts. And the next one is titled Getting Karma Instantly. I witnessed the most wonderful unfolding of instant karma in the shopping center car park earlier this evening. I was waiting for my Chinese takeaway to be ready and was walking my dog around the edge of the car park. Bozo comes out of the supermarket, unloads his shopping trolley into the back of his rather lovely SUV. Rather than walk 5 meters to the trolley bay, he gives his shopping trolley a mighty shove out into the middle of the car park. There was no one else driving around and it did not hit any other car, fortunately. He then leaps into his car, throws it into reverse and reverses out of his parking bay at speed. What he has not seen is that the trolley, after being shoved aside, has hit a small speed hump and rolled its way back, stopping directly behind his car. The crunch as he hit it was enormously satisfying. The trolley tipped over and became wedged under the back of the car. It was just beautiful. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.